Wayne Freeman grit his teeth as another bolt of agonizing electricity surged through his naked body, refusing to scream and denying his Klingon torturers the satisfaction. Hours before, Wayne had watched a Klingon ambush brutally massacre his human platoon. Now he hung in chains, the lone survivor enduring vicious beatings, electrocution, and waterboarding in a filthy alien dungeon. The Klingon warlord Odin wanted information on human military secrets, but Wayne would rather die than betray his species. Odin stormed into the cell, eyes blazing, demanding Wayne talk. Despite his bruised and bloodied face, his body pushed to the edge of death, Wayne rasped a defiant, "Fuck you." He had to endure and resist. If he broke, it could mean the end of all humans on this hostile alien world. The guards exchanged nervous glances. They had never seen a captive, let alone a lowly human, remain unbroken after so much brutal torture. Wayne was turning their beliefs about the fragility of humans upside down. Odin backhanded Wayne viciously, then stalked out, growling at the guards to torture Wayne further. He had to know how much pain this extraordinary human could take before he finally shattered. The Klingons saw humans as a weak slave race, but Wayne was showing them the true iron will that lurked within man. His incredible resolve in the face of such suffering was foiling their plans. Humanity's fate hung in the balance. If Wayne could hold out through the endless torment, he might just give humans a fighting chance on this harsh planet. No matter what happened, Wayne vowed he would never break. The Klingons would learn that humans were not as soft as they seemed. Days turned into weeks in the dank torture chamber. Wayne hung from his chains, naked, shivering, starving, dehydrated, covered in blood, piss, shit, and vomit. His body was emaciated, every inch of skin mottled with dark bruises and bloody lacerations. His face was so battered and swollen, it was barely recognizable as human. But Wayne's blue eyes still blazed with unbreakable defiance. He had not screamed once. He had not broken, no matter how sadistic and brutal the torture became. His iron will remained unshatterable. Odin observed the daily torture sessions, both fascinated and frustrated by the human's resilience. He had never seen any being, let alone a lowly human, withstand so much pain without cracking. Odin decided it was time to unleash Krone. Krone was a massive, hulking Klingon, with cold black eyes and a face like a slab of granite. He was infamous for his brutality and his ability to break any prisoner. Krone's methods were cruel and medieval. "Break him," Odin growled. "I don't care what it takes, make him talk." Krone worked on Wayne for days. He ripped out Wayne's fingernails and toenails one by one with rusted pliers. He shattered the small bones in Wayne's fingers, toes, hands, and feet with a hammer. He took a filleting knife and peeled long strips of skin and muscle from Wayne's arms, legs, chest, and back. Through it all, Wayne remained defiant, his jaw clenched so hard his teeth cracked. He refused to scream. His only sounds were animalistic grunts and snarls of agony and rage, but he never once begged for mercy. Krone, who had broken countless prisoners over the years, grew increasingly unsettled. He had never had a prisoner last this long without breaking. The human's resilience infuriated him. In a fit of frustrated rage, Krone began beating Wayne savagely, blow after blow, until Wayne was a bloody, broken heap. Just as Wayne was on the verge of blacking out, Odin intervened. "Enough! Stop, you fool!" he barked at Krone. "We still need him alive to talk." Krone grunted, breathing heavily. He spat on Wayne in disgust, then unchained him from the ceiling shackles. Wayne collapsed into a mangled pile on the floor, unconscious. Krone reached down and grabbed Wayne by his hair, preparing to drag him back to his cell. Suddenly, Wayne's eyes snapped open, feral and filled with wrath. His hands shot up and wrapped his chains around Krone's neck in a burst of adrenaline-fueled strength. Krone's eyes bulged in shock as Wayne tightened the chains in an iron grip. The other guards rushed forward, but it was too late. Wayne strangled Krone viciously, chains biting into the Klingon's neck, until Krone went limp. Wayne held on until he was sure Krone was dead. Then he released the chains, and Krone's corpse slumped to the ground. Odin emerged from the shadows where he had been watching, his expression unreadable. He stared at Wayne, this frail, broken human who had just killed his most brutal enforcer with his bare hands. He signaled to the guards. The guards seized Wayne and dragged him back to his cell. As they went, other Klingons stared at Wayne with a mix of shock and something almost like respect. The human had done the unthinkable. He had broken the unbreakable Kron. Wayne was thrown into his dark cell, grievously wounded and at the edge of death, but he was alive. And he had made a fatal mistake. He had shown Odin and the others a glimpse of what humans were truly capable of. He had revealed the depths of willpower and ferocity that lurked within mankind. Whispers rippled through the Klingon ranks as news of Kron's death spread. Hardened warriors recoiled in shock upon hearing that a human, a species they considered weak and inferior, had killed the most fearsome among them with nothing but chains and raw willpower. Soldiers huddled together, murmuring that the human called Wayne must be more than he appeared. Some speculated he was a powerful sorcerer disguised in human skin. Others claimed he was an ancient warrior spirit, inhabiting a mortal body. These fantastical rumors soon reached Odin's ears. The warlord's brow furrowed as he listened to his men speak of Wayne with a mixture of awe and dread. Odin refused to indulge such superstitious nonsense, but he couldn't deny that the human's feat had rattled him. He needed to confront Wayne himself, to look into the eyes of the man who had done the impossible. Odin strode into the dank cell where Wayne was shackled. The human hung limply from the wall, his ravaged body a canvas of bruises, lacerations, and burns. But when Wayne raised his head to meet Odin's gaze, his eyes burned with undiminished fire. "How?" Odin growled. "How did you kill Kron? What manner of creature are you?" Wayne's split lips curled into a bloody grin. A rasping chuckle escaped his throat, building into full-throated laughter that echoed off the cell walls. Odin took an involuntary step back, unnerved by the eerie sound. "You Klingons think you know pain," Wayne croaked when his laughter subsided. "You know nothing. I've endured more pain in my life than your entire race combined. Pain is my constant companion, my friend. It makes me stronger. It reminds me I'm alive." Wayne leaned forward, his shackles clinking. His blue eyes bored into Odin's, feral and intense. "You can't break me because I'm already broken." Odin stared at Wayne, at the unearthly gleam in his eyes, and felt a prickle of unease travel up his spine. He had never encountered a being like this, someone who seemed to embrace agony like a lover. Odin abruptly turned on his heel and left the cell, ordering the guards to give the human food and water but otherwise leave him be. He needed time to ponder this unsettling development. In the days that followed, Odin found his thoughts continuously drawn back to the enigmatic human. He was fascinated by Wayne's unbreakable will, his ability to endure and even thrive in the face of unimaginable suffering. Odin needed to understand the source of this strength. And so the Klingon warlord began visiting Wayne's cell regularly, not to torture, but to talk. At first, Wayne remained tight-lipped and suspicious, expecting each encounter to end in new torments. But gradually, as Odin continued to engage him in conversation, probing him with questions about his home world and his people, Wayne began to open up. The human was wary, knowing his words could be used against his kind, but he also recognized an opportunity to gain valuable insight into the mind of his enemy. And so, bit by bit, Wayne started to share tales of Earth and its history with Odin. He spoke of the countless wars that had ravaged his planet, of the atrocities humans had committed against each other in the name of greed, power, and ideology. He described the horrors of trench warfare, the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the genocides in Nazi Germany and Rwanda. Odin listened, astounded by the depth of cruelty and destruction humans had both endured and inflicted. On Kronos, warfare was a way of life, but it was governed by a strict code of honor. This idea of total war, of annihilating civilian populations and laying waste to entire cities, was alien to him, too. Through their conversations, Odin began to understand that humans were a species forged in the crucible of unrelenting conflict and suffering. They had been tested and tempered by the fires of war and emerged stronger, more resilient. Pain was not just a part of their existence, it was the very foundation upon which their civilization had been built. As this realization dawned on him, Odin felt a grudging respect kindle within him for this lone human warrior. Wayne was a living embodiment of his people's indomitable spirit, their ability to stare into the abyss of annihilation and refuse to blink. The Klingon looked at Wayne with new eyes, seeing not a weak, inferior being but a formidable adversary, one who might pose a greater threat to the Empire than he had ever imagined. As Odin and Wayne's unusual bond deepened through their philosophical discussions, tensions simmered within the Klingon ranks. Krull, a brutish warrior with a scarred face and cold, calculating eyes, watched their interactions with growing disgust. He saw Odin's fascination with the human as a weakness, a betrayal of everything Klingons stood for. Krull had long coveted Odin's position as clan leader. He craved power, and had secretly been gathering a cadre of loyal followers who shared his view that Odin had gone soft. Wayne's continued survival and Odin's visits to his cell were the final straws. One night, as shadows cloaked the compound, Krull made his move. He and his followers stormed Odin's quarters, bat'leths drawn. Odin, roused from sleep by the commotion, barely had time to grab his weapon before Krull was upon him. Steel clashed against steel as the two Klingons fought. Despite Odin's formidable skills, Krull's youth and fury gave him an edge. His bat'leth sliced into Odin's flesh, drawing blood. Odin staggered back, hand pressed to a deep wound in his side. Just as Krull moved in for the kill, a handful of Odin's loyal guards burst into the room. They engaged the rebels, giving Odin a chance to escape. He stumbled through the corridors, blood dripping in his wake, until he reached Wayne's cell. Wayne lifted his head as Odin collapsed against the bars, face ashen. The human instantly understood the situation. He saw in Odin's eyes a desperate plea for help. A calculating look crossed Wayne's battered face. He leveraged the moment to strike a deal. "I'll help you crush this rebellion and retake control," he rasped, "but in exchange you give me my freedom and a ship back to Earth." Odin hesitated only a moment before nodding curtly. He unlocked the cell and tossed Wayne a Klingon disruptor. Side by side, the unlikely allies confronted the rebels. Wayne fought like a man possessed, his weeks of pent-up rage and desperation fueling each blow. His human tactics, low blows, feints, using the environment to his advantage, caught the Klingons off guard. Odin's men rallied around the humans' raw ferocity. The battle turned into a running skirmish through the compound's halls. Disruptor fire scorched the walls as bodies fell on both sides. Wayne and Odin cut a path through the rebels, a whirlwind of lethal strikes and snarls. At last, they confronted Krull in the Great Hall. The rebel leader's eyes widened as he took in Wayne, shocked to see the human not only alive, but armed and fighting alongside Odin. "Surrender now," Odin growled, "and I may show mercy." Krull spat at their feet. "I'll never bow to a human-loving traitor like you." He charged forward with a roar, bat'leth aimed at Wayne's throat. The duel was brutal and primal. Krull was fresh and strong, while Wayne was battered and half-starved. But the human fought with the desperate strength of a cornered animal. He weathered blow after punishing blow, his body a map of bloody wounds, refusing to fall. Wayne's pain threshold, honed by weeks of torture, was staggering. Injuries that would have felled a lesser man barely slowed him. Krull's frustration mounted as the human kept coming at him, relentless and unyielding. In a final, vicious exchange, Wayne trapped Krull's bat'leth with his own. The two strained against each other, faces inches apart. With a burst of adrenaline-fueled strength, Wayne ripped the weapon from Krull's grasp and wrapped his hands around the Klingon's throat. Krull thrashed and struggled, but Wayne's iron grip never wavered. The human squeezed with all his might, feeling vertebrae pop and crunch beneath his fingers. Only when Krull hung limp and lifeless did Wayne let his body drop. The remaining rebels, seeing their champion defeated, threw down their weapons in surrender. Odin's loyal warriors moved to restrain them as the warlord himself limped to Wayne's side. The human and the Klingon locked eyes, mutual respect and understanding passing between them. They had forged an unlikely alliance in the crucible of battle. two warriors from different worlds united by a shared code of honor and a thirst to survive. As the last embers of rebellion were stamped out, Wayne allowed himself a grim smile. He had endured the unimaginable and emerged not only alive, but victorious. Now, at long last, he was going home. In the aftermath of the rebellion, Odin honored his promise to Wayne. The human warrior was now free to return home after enduring unimaginable horrors as a captive of the Klingons. Wayne's battered body still bore the scars of weeks of brutal torture, but his spirit remained unbroken. He had not only survived but emerged victorious, earning the grudging respect of his former tormentors. As Wayne prepared to depart on a Klingon ship, an urgent message arrived. A massive human fleet had entered Klingon space, apparently searching for their lost soldier. The news sent a ripple of unease through the Klingon compound. Odin knew his weakened clan stood no chance against the technologically superior human forces, especially if they attacked in retaliation for Wayne's capture and torture. In a surprising turn of events, Wayne volunteered to stay and help Odin negotiate a peace treaty with the humans. Odin was shocked by the offer. After all the pain and suffering the Klingons had inflicted upon Wayne, Odin couldn't fathom why the human would want to help them. "Why would you aid those who tortured you?" Odin asked, his brow furrowed in confusion. Wayne met Odin's gaze, his blue eyes weary but resolute. "I've seen enough bloodshed," he said quietly, "on both sides. More violence will only lead to more suffering. A peace treaty could benefit both our peoples." Odin was moved by Wayne's selflessness and wisdom. The human had every reason to want revenge, to see the Klingons burn for what they had done to him. Yet here he was, offering to broker peace. Odin nodded in agreement, realizing that Wayne's unique perspective could be invaluable in the negotiations to come. As the human fleet approached, Wayne and Odin flew out to meet them in a small shuttle. Admiral Hawkins, the human commander, was initially suspicious of the Klingons' intentions. But when he saw Wayne, alive and standing alongside Odin, his eyes widened in shock. Wayne recounted his experiences to the Admiral, sparing no detail of the horrors he had endured. But he also emphasized Odin's change of heart, the unlikely respect that had grown between them, and the potential for peace between their peoples. Admiral Hawkins listened, his expression shifting from disbelief to grudging consideration. Though hesitant to trust the Klingons, he could see the sincerity in Wayne's eyes. He agreed to hear out their proposal. In the following days, Wayne acted as a mediator between the humans and Klingons. He shuttled back and forth between the fleet and the compound, relaying messages, clarifying misunderstandings, and slowly building a bridge of trust. It was a tense and delicate process. Generations of hostility and prejudice had to be unraveled piece by piece, but Wayne's unique position, as a human who had seen the worst of the Klingons and yet still believed in the possibility of peace, lent his words a power and credibility that neither side could ignore. Gradually, through Wayne's tireless efforts, the shape of a historic peace treaty began to emerge. The treaty included provisions for the exchange of technology, resources, and cultural knowledge, as well as a mutual defense pact against common threats. Both sides began to recognize that their long-standing animosity had only weakened them in the face of the greater dangers that lurked in the galaxy. When the day of the treaty signing finally arrived, there was a palpable sense of history in the making. Odin and Admiral Hawkins faced each other across a table, Wayne standing between them. As the two leaders pressed their thumbs to the treaty document, leaving their blood-red signatures, Wayne felt a swell of emotion. He had suffered greatly at the hands of the Klingons, but he had also come to understand them, to see the potential for honor and nobility beneath their brutal exterior. And now, through his efforts, a new era of peace and cooperation was dawning. As the treaty was signed and the room erupted in applause, Wayne and Odin exchanged a look of profound understanding. They were more than just representatives of their races. They were living proof that even the most bitter of enemies could find common ground, that the cycle of hatred and violence could be broken. As the ink dried on the historic treaty, Wayne felt a surge of bittersweet emotions. He had achieved the impossible, brokering peace between two races that had been locked in a cycle of hatred and violence for generations. But the cost had been high, weeks of unimaginable torture, the loss of his entire platoon, the scars that would forever mark his body and mind. Now as he prepared to board the human ship that would take him back to Earth, back to a life he barely remembered, Wayne couldn't shake the feeling that his journey was far from over. Odin and Hawkins exchanged alarmed glances. "What do we know about these aliens?" Hawkins demanded. The scout shook his head. "Very little, sir, but our long-range scans indicate their ships are armed with weapons far beyond anything we've ever encountered. Technology that makes our most advanced systems look like children's toys." A grim silence fell over the hangar. Wayne could see the same realization dawning on every face, human and Klingon alike. If these aliens were hostile, if they chose to attack, it could mean the end of both their races. Odin turned to Hawkins, his eyes hard. "We must combine our forces," he growled. "It's the only way we stand a chance against a threat of this magnitude." Hawkins nodded slowly, the weight of the decision etched on his features. "Agreed. We'll need our best minds working together if we're going to have any hope of survival." As the two leaders began to discuss strategy, Wayne felt a familiar stirring in his blood, the same drive that had kept him alive through weeks of torture, that had fueled his impossible victory over Krorn. He stepped forward, his voice ringing out across the hangar. "I volunteer to lead a joint strike force against these aliens," he declared. "I have intimate knowledge of Klingon space and human tactics. I believe I can help give us an edge." Odin and Hawkins turned to him, surprise and respect mingling in their expressions. Odin stepped forward and clasped Wayne's shoulder, his grip firm. "For your courage and loyalty do you credit, Wayne," he rumbled. "I would be honored to have you lead our forces into battle. I hereby grant you a field commission as a general in the Klingon army." Wayne nodded, a grim smile touching his lips. He knew he was signing up for more pain, more struggle, but he also knew that this was his destiny. He had been forged in the crucible of suffering to become the warrior both races needed in their darkest hour. As the alien fleet entered Klingon space, Wayne and his strike team were ready. They engaged the enemy in a series of daring hit-and-run attacks, using the element of surprise and their combined human ingenuity and Klingon ferocity to keep the aliens off balance. Wayne's tactical brilliance shone through in every engagement. He seemed to anticipate the aliens' every move, striking at their weaknesses with lightning precision. Under his leadership, the joint force scored several stunning victories against the technologically superior foe. But the aliens were quick to adapt. They began to predict Wayne's strategies, countering his every move with ruthless efficiency. In one devastating battle, they lured Wayne's team into an ambush, raking their ships with searing energy beams. Wayne's vessel shuddered under the onslaught, consoles exploding in showers of sparks. He felt searing pain lance through his body as shrapnel tore into his flesh, but he gritted his teeth and fought on, his hands flying over the controls. Around him his crew fell one by one, until only a handful remained. The strike force had been all but annihilated, their ships reduced to drifting wreckage. Wayne slumped in his chair, his uniform soaked with blood, his vision blurring. Every breath was agony, every movement sending fresh waves of pain crashing through his broken body. But even as darkness closed in, Wayne refused to surrender. With a roar of defiance, he hauled himself upright, his eyes blazing with unbreakable will. Inspired by his indomitable spirit, the survivors of the strike force fell in behind Wayne's battered ship as he plunged towards the heart of the alien fleet. Wayne targeted the massive dreadnought at the center of the formation, the flagship, bristling with weaponry. He knew that if they could take it out, it would throw the alien command structure into chaos. Weaving through a storm of enemy fire, Wayne guided his limping vessel straight towards the dreadnought's bridge. Alarms blared and warning lights flashed, but he ignored them all, his focus absolute. At the last second, he wrenched the controls, slamming his ship into the dreadnought's hull. The impact shuddered through the vessel, throwing Wayne from his chair. He hit the deck hard, feeling bones snap, his vision whiting out with pain. But as darkness closed in, he heard the sweet sound of explosions rippling through the alien flagship. A fierce grin split his bloody lips. They had struck a blow the aliens would not soon forget. Wayne had shown them the true mettle of the human and Klingon spirit. In that moment, even as his consciousness faded, Wayne knew that no matter what came next, he had made a difference. He had given his people a fighting chance. Wayne's battered ship hurtled through the void, dodging a storm of energy beams and torpedoes. The alien flagship loomed ahead, a behemoth bristling with weaponry. Wayne gritted his teeth, ignoring the blood dripping into his eyes from a gash on his forehead. "Prepare to board on my mark," he growled into the comm. The survivors of his strike team, a ragtag mix of humans and Klingons, readied their weapons. As they neared the flagship, Wayne wrenched the controls, slamming his ship into the larger vessel's hull. The impact shuddered through the ship, throwing sparks from overloaded consoles. "Mark!" Wayne roared. Boarding pods launched from the strike ship, latching onto the flagship's hull like parasites. Wayne and his troops poured into the alien vessel, weapons blazing. They fought their way through the ship's twisting corridors, the air thick with the stench of ozone and scorched flesh. Alien defenders fell before their onslaught, no match for the combined ferocity of human and Klingon warriors. At last they reached the bridge. The doors exploded inward and Wayne charged through, his disruptor spitting death. There, waiting for them, was the Overlord. The alien was a nightmare made flesh, a writhing mass of tentacles and pulsating flesh. It towered over Wayne, its eyes cold and pitiless. "Humans! Klingons!" the Overlord said, its voice a grating electronic rasp. "Your species are a plague upon the galaxy, a plague that must be cleansed." Wayne stepped forward, his weapon leveled at the creature's head. "Big talk from a squid," he snarled. "Why don't you come over here and let me cleanse my boot up your ass?" The Overlord's eyes narrowed. "Your bravado is futile. This fleet is but the vanguard. Soon our main force will arrive to scour your kind from existence." Wayne laughed, a harsh bark devoid of humor. "You think you're the first to try to wipe us out? Get in line." With a roar, Wayne charged the Overlord, firing as he went. The creature lashed out with its tentacles, sending Wayne flying. He crashed into a console, pain exploding through his body. But pain was an old friend. Wayne embraced it, used it to fuel his rage. He surged to his feet and attacked again, dodging the Overlord's psionic blasts. They clashed in a whirlwind of violence, Wayne's blade against the Overlord's tentacles. The creature was strong, fast, its mind a battering ram of psychic force, but Wayne was relentless, implacable. He weathered the psychic assault, pushing through the agony, his will unbreakable. For an eternity they fought, the bridge shaking around them. Wayne's vision blurred, his body screaming for respite, but he pushed on, driven by a primal refusal to yield. In a final desperate lunge, Wayne plunged his blade into the Overlord's central neural cluster. The creature convulsed, a psychic shriek tearing through Wayne's mind. Then it collapsed, dead. Wayne staggered back, barely standing. Around him, the bridge crew erupted into cheers. The Overlord was slain. But the battle wasn't over. "Set the warp core to overload," Wayne commanded. "We're taking this ship and as many of its friends as we can with us." His troops leapt to obey. Minutes later, the flagship detonated in a blinding flash, the explosion ripping through the alien fleet. Ships vanished in balls of plasma, torn apart by the shockwave. The remaining aliens, their nerve broken, fled into the void. The day was won, but the cost had been high. As the adrenaline faded, Wayne felt his wounds overtake him. He collapsed, his blood pooling on the deck. As darkness closed in, he saw Odin's face above him, heard the Klingon's voice as if from a great distance. Admiral Hawkins' face swam into view. "Commander Wayne, you magnificent bastard. When you wake up, you're going to be the official face of human-Klingon cooperation. If you thought the torture was bad..." Wayne tried to laugh, but it came out as a gurgle. The last thing he saw before the blackness took him was the shattered hulks of alien ships drifting in the void. He had won. They had won. Wayne had shown the galaxy what one human could do, what humanity could do. They would not go quietly. They would not bow to any conqueror's boot. If the aliens came, If they tried to cleanse the galaxy of human and Klingon alike, they would learn the depths of mankind's resolve. They would learn why we had always triumphed against the odds, because we never ever gave up. As Wayne lay in the medbay, his body battered and broken from his desperate assault on the alien flagship, he could feel the eyes of the human and Klingon medics on him. They worked tirelessly to mend his shattered bones and torn flesh, their hands steady, despite the awe and reverence in their gazes. Word of Wayne's incredible feat had spread like wildfire through both fleets. The human who had killed a Klingon warlord with his bare hands, who had endured weeks of unimaginable torture without breaking, who had slain the alien overlord in single combat. He was a legend now, a symbol of the indomitable spirit that united their two races. As the days turned into weeks, Wayne slowly healed, his body knitting itself back together with the stubbornness that had seen him through so many trials. And as his strength returned, so too did his sense of purpose. He knew that the alliance he had forged with his blood and pain was still fragile. The scars of centuries of conflict and mistrust could not be erased overnight. If this newborn partnership was to survive, to grow into something that could weather the coming storm, it would need a guiding hand, a bridge between worlds. Wayne threw himself into his new role as liaison with a fervor that bordered on obsession. He shuttled tirelessly between the human and Klingon ships, spending long hours locked in meetings with admirals and generals, diplomats and scientists. He shared his hard-won insights into Klingon culture with his human counterparts, helping them to understand the complex web of honor, tradition, and warrior pride that shaped their new allies. And he worked just as diligently to bridge the gap from the other side, patiently explaining human customs and values to skeptical Klingon commanders. Under Wayne's guidance, the first tentative seeds of true cooperation began to sprout. Human and Klingon engineers huddled together over glowing displays, combining their technological prowess to design new ships and weapons capable of facing the alien threat. Warriors from both sides trained together, learning to fight as one in preparation for the battles to come. But even as the alliance grew stronger, Wayne could sense the undercurrents of discontent that threatened to tear it apart. There were those on both sides who clung to the old hatreds, who saw this union as a betrayal of everything they held dear. One evening, as Wayne sparred with a group of Klingon warriors in a dimly lit training hall, his instincts suddenly screamed a warning. He whirled just as a disruptor blast seared the air where his head had been a heartbeat before. Assassins burst from the shadows, their blades glinting in the low light. At their head was Morak, a hardline Klingon commander known for his disdain for humans. Wayne had suspected for weeks that Morak was plotting something, but he had never imagined an attack this brazen. The Klingons fell upon Wayne with murderous intent, their faces twisted with loathing. Wayne met them head-on, his body flowing into the lethal dance of combat, even as his still-healing wounds screamed in protest. He fought like a man possessed, his every blow fueled by the unbreakable will that had seen him through hell. But he was one against many, and these were no ordinary warriors. They were fanatics, willing to die for their cause. Just as Wayne's strength began to falter, the doors of the training hall burst open. Odin charged in at the head of a squad of loyal warriors, their disruptors spitting fire. The assassins fell before the onslaught, cut down one by one until only Morak was left standing. The traitorous commander snarled in defiance, his eyes wild. He lunged at Wayne with a primal scream, his blade thirsty for blood, but Wayne was ready. He caught Morak's wrist, twisting savagely until the bones snapped. The Klingon's scream turned to a gurgle as Wayne's other hand closed around his throat. In that moment, as he stared into Morak's bulging eyes, Wayne saw the depth of the hatred that threatened to tear the alliance apart. He knew that this was just the beginning, that there would be others like Morak on both sides who would stop at nothing to see this fragile peace shattered. As Odin's men dragged Morak away in chains, Wayne and the old Klingon shared a long look. They both understood the magnitude of the task before them. The alliance was a newborn flame, and it would take constant vigilance and unyielding determination to nurture it to strength. In the aftermath of the attack, Odin and Admiral Hawkins called Wayne to a private meeting. They praised his courage and quick thinking in the face of Morac's treachery, but their faces were grim. "This cannot happen again," Hawkins said, his voice tight with anger. "We cannot allow rogue elements to undermine everything we've built." Odin nodded in agreement. "We need to root out these dissidents on both sides before they can do more damage." They turned to Wayne, their eyes heavy with the weight of command. "We need you to lead this effort," Odin said. "You are uniquely positioned to navigate the complexities of both our cultures. You must find those who seek to divide us and expose their schemes to the light." Wayne felt the weight of their trust settle on his shoulders. He knew that this mission would test him in ways he had never been tested before. It would require him to delve into the darkest corners of both human and Klingon society, to confront prejudices and hatreds that ran as deep as blood. But he also knew that he was the only one who could do it. He had forged this alliance with his own suffering, his own unwavering resolve. He would not let it fail. Wayne squared his shoulders, his jaw set with grim determination. "I accept," he said, his voice ringing with resolve. "I will not rest until our alliance is secure." As he strode from the room to begin his new mission, Wayne could feel the eyes of history upon him. He was no longer just a soldier, no longer just a survivor. He was a guardian now, a shield against the forces that threatened to tear two races apart. As Wayne burrowed deeper into the twisted web of treachery and deceit within the Klingon and human ranks, a chilling realization struck him like a disruptor blast. The traitorous elements he had been hunting were not acting alone. They were mere puppets, their strings pulled by a sinister force lurking in the shadows. Wayne pored over intercepted transmissions, surveillance logs and encrypted data files, his eyes burning from exhaustion. The patterns began to emerge, painting a picture that filled him with cold dread. The dissident factions on both sides were receiving orders from a hidden alien cabal, the Shadow Syndicate. These enigmatic beings, a rogue offshoot of the same species as the slain Overlord, had been orchestrating the unrest, stoking the flames of discord between humans and Klingons. Their goal was now crystal clear: to fracture the fragile alliance and leave both races weakened and vulnerable before the arrival of their main invasion armada. Time was running out. Wayne knew he had to act fast to rip away the veil of secrecy and expose the Shadow Syndicate's machinations. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance. Working feverishly, Wayne devised a daring plan. He would lead a small hand-picked team of the finest human and Klingon operatives on a covert mission into the heart of enemy territory. Their target, a heavily fortified space station cloaked in the depths of Klingon space, which his sources indicated served as the Shadow Syndicate's base of operations. Wayne assembled his team, each member chosen for their unique skills and unwavering loyalty. There was Kara, the human cyber warfare specialist, with a gift for cracking even the most impenetrable security systems. Morak, the grizzled Klingon warrior who had once sought Wayne's death, now fought by his side, bound by a blood oath of redemption. Rounding out the group were Talia, the Klingon infiltration expert, and Jax, the human marksman with nerves of steel. Together they boarded a stealthed Klingon bird of prey and set course for the hidden station. As they approached, Wayne felt a familiar surge of adrenaline, the rush of impending battle. But this time, the stakes were higher than ever before. The bird of prey docked with the station, its cloaking field shielding them from detection. Wayne and his team emerged, weapons primed, ready for anything. They crept through the dimly lit corridors, senses heightened, ears straining for any sound of movement. But they weren't just facing the alien cabal's soldiers. The treacherous dissident factions, both human and Klingon, had converged on the station as well. These were warriors Wayne had once fought beside, now twisted by the Shadow Syndicate's machinations. The betrayal cut deep, but Wayne pushed the pain aside, focusing on the mission at hand. Inch by hard-won inch, they battled their way deeper into the station's labyrinthine depths. The enemy fought with desperate ferocity, as if driven by a fanatic's zeal. Wayne and his team matched them blow for blow, their skills honed by a lifetime of warfare. At last they breached the inner sanctum, a cavernous chamber pulsing with eerie alien technology, and there, waiting for them, stood the mastermind, the shadowy figure at the heart of the conspiracy. The mastermind was a nightmarish fusion of flesh and machine, its body writhing with cybernetic tendrils. Wayne felt the weight of its psionic gaze upon him, a pressure that threatened to crush his very soul. "You are too late," the mastermind hissed, its voice a discordant symphony of organic and synthetic tones. "The seeds of chaos have already been sown. Your alliance will crumble and your worlds will burn." Wayne met the mastermind's gaze, his jaw set with grim determination. He had faced down monsters before, had endured torments that would shatter lesser men. He would not falter now, not with so much at stake. The mastermind lashed out with a psionic blast, a lance of pure agony that speared into Wayne's mind. Wayne staggered, his vision fragmenting, his nerves on fire, but he did not fall. He reached deep within himself, drawing on the same wellspring of resilience that had sustained him through weeks of Klingon torture, through the loss of his platoon, through the battles that had nearly broken his body and spirit. With a roar of defiance, Wayne pushed back against the psychic assault. He could feel the mastermind's surprise, its disbelief that a mere human could resist its power. Wayne pressed his advantage, pouring every ounce of his pain, his rage, his indomitable will into a focused psionic counterattack. The air between them crackled with mental energy as their minds clashed in a titanic struggle. Wayne could feel the mastermind's defenses crumbling, its synapses overloading under the relentless onslaught. With a final, desperate gambit, Wayne unleashed a cascading feedback loop, turning the mastermind's own psionic might against it. The effect was devastating. The mastermind convulsed, its cybernetic implants sparking and smoking as the feedback tore through its neural pathways. Its scream was a sound that would haunt Wayne's nightmares for years to come, a wail of agony and despair that seemed to echo from the very depths of hell. And then it was over. The mastermind collapsed, its body twitching spasmodically, its once powerful mind reduced to a shattered husk. Wayne sagged to his knees, his breath coming in ragged gasps, his head pounding with the aftershocks of the psionic duel. But there was no time to rest. The station shuddered around them, alarms shrieking, warning lights flashing. The Shadow Syndicate's failsafes had been triggered. The station was going to self-destruct, taking all evidence of their nefarious plot with it. "Move!" Wayne barked, hauling himself to his feet. His team needed no further prompting. They raced back through the station's corridors, dodging debris and explosions, leaping over the bodies of the fallen. They piled into the bird of prey just as the station began to tear itself apart, massive sections of hull peeling away, like the petals of some horrific metal flower. The bird of prey roared away from the doomed station, the flames of its destruction nipping at their heels. Wayne watched through the view screen as the cloaked base erupted in a blinding flash of light, a miniature supernova blooming in the void of space. It was over. The Shadow Syndicate had been exposed, its leadership decapitated. Wayne and his team had the evidence they needed to prove the alien cabal's existence and its insidious manipulations. As the bird of prey set course back to the main fleet, Wayne allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. They had struck a blow against the enemy today, a blow that would be felt across the stars. But he knew this was only the beginning. The true war was still to come. When they arrived back at the fleet, Wayne wasted no time in presenting his findings to Odin and Admiral Hawkins. The two leaders listened in stunned silence as Wayne laid out the full scope of the Shadow Syndicate's plot, the depth of their infiltration into both human and Klingon society. There was no denying the truth of Wayne's words, not with the mountain of evidence he had gathered. Odin and Hawkins exchanged a look of grim understanding. They knew what had to be done. Orders were given, fleets mobilized. The humans and Klingons would stand together against the coming storm, united by a common enemy and a shared resolve. And at the forefront of this mighty alliance stood Wayne, the man who had endured the unimaginable, who had sacrificed everything to forge this fragile peace. As the preparations for war began in earnest, Wayne felt a sense of calm descend upon him. He had walked through the fires of hell and emerged stronger, tempered by pain and loss into something more than human. Whatever the future held, whatever horrors the alien invaders would unleash, Wayne knew he would face them head-on, unbowed and unbroken, for he was the shield and the sword of his people, the indomitable human spirit made flesh, and he would fight to his last breath to defend those he held dear. The stage was set, the pieces in motion. The final battle for the fate of the galaxy was about to begin, and Wayne was ready to meet it, ready to unleash the full fury of the human and Klingon races upon those who would see them destroyed. Ready to stand fast against the coming darkness no matter the cost. For he was Wayne, the unbreakable, the unbowed, and he would never ever yield. The klaxons of war blared across the void as the alien invasion fleet surged towards the combined human-Klingon forces. Wayne stood on the bridge of the flagship, his eyes hard as flint, his jaw set with grim determination. Around him, the crew bustled with tense activity, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and resolve. The viewscreen flickered to life, revealing a seething mass of alien ships, their hulls pulsing with malevolent energy. Wayne felt a chill run down his spine as he beheld the sheer scale of the enemy force, but he pushed the fear aside, focusing on the task at hand. "All ships prepare to engage," he barked into the comm. "Strike groups move into position, we hit them hard and fast, buy time for the main fleet." Acknowledgements crackled back as the strike groups peeled away, darting towards the enemy fleet like wolves harrying a herd of prey. Wayne watched as the first volleys of fire erupted between the ships, the void lit by searing beams of energy and the flash of exploding hulls. The battle was joined, a cataclysmic clash of forces that shook the very fabric of space. The humans and Klingons fought with a ferocity born of desperation, their ships weaving and dodging amidst the maelstrom of destruction. But the aliens were relentless, their weapons cutting through shields and armor like a scythe through wheat. Wayne gritted his teeth as reports of casualties flooded in, ship after ship winking out on the tactical display. But he refused to let the losses shake him. He had to stay focused, to find a way to turn the tide. And then he saw it, a gap in the alien formation, a momentary weakness exposed by the frenetic pace of the battle. Wayne's mind raced, a daring plan taking shape. "Odin, take command of the fleet," he said, turning to the scarred Klingon beside him. "Keep them engaged. I'm taking a boarding party to the enemy flagship." Odin's eyes widened, but he nodded grimly. "Kapla," he growled, the Klingon battle cry a benediction and a challenge. Wayne gathered his strike team, a hand-picked group of the toughest, most skilled warriors from both races. They armed themselves to the teeth, checking weapons and armor with the grim efficiency of those who know they might not return. The boarding craft punched through the enemy screens, weaving and jinking to avoid the storms of fire that lashed out at them. They struck the alien flagship like a spear, breaching its hull and spilling into its guts like vengeful parasites. Inside, it was a nightmare made manifest. The corridors were a twisted labyrinth of pulsing flesh and chitinous armor, echoing with the shrieks of alien horrors. But Wayne and his team pushed forward, their weapons spitting death, their hearts steeled against the unspeakable horrors that assailed them. They fought their way to the central control room, a cavernous chamber that throbbed with malevolent energy. And there, waiting for them, was the alien Supreme Commander. The creature was a colossal abomination, a seething mass of tentacles and eyes and gnashing maws. It exuded an aura of pure malevolence, a psychic stench that assaulted the mind and soul. Wayne felt fear rise up inside him, a primal terror that threatened to overwhelm his senses, but he pushed it down, drawing on the same bottomless well of courage and defiance that had sustained him through the darkest of trials. He stepped forward, his weapon leveled at the creature's heart. "Your reign of terror ends here," he snarled, his voice raw with righteous fury. The alien commander laughed, a sound like the shattering of souls. "Foolish meat," it gurgled, its voice a nightmarish cacophony. "You cannot comprehend the depths of your insignificance. Your struggle is futile. Your extinction is inevitable." Wayne's answer was a burst of plasma fire that seared the creature's flesh. The battle was joined, a titanic clash of wills and weapons. The alien commander was a formidable foe, its psychic powers lashing at Wayne's mind, its monstrous strength battering his body. But Wayne would not yield. He fought with a savage fury, his every blow fueled by the memory of the suffering he had endured, of the comrades he had lost. His body screamed in agony as claws and tentacles tore at his flesh, but he pushed through the pain, his spirit unbreakable. The battle raged for an eternity, the chamber shaking with the fury of their struggle. Wayne's armor was rent and shattered, his body a map of bloody wounds, but still he fought on, his eyes blazing with unquenchable fire. And then, with a final Herculean effort, Wayne plunged his blade into the creature's central mass. The alien commander convulsed, a scream of agony and rage tearing from its monstrous throat. It thrashed and flailed, but Wayne held fast, twisting the blade deeper into its fetid flesh. With a final shudder, the creature collapsed, its massive bulk crashing to the deck. Wayne staggered back, his breath coming in ragged gasps, his vision blurring at the edges. He looked around at his strike team, at the battered and bloody warriors who had fought so valiantly at his side. "We need to end this," he rasped, his voice barely above a whisper. "The self-destruct—" They nodded, grim understanding in their eyes. They knew what had to be done. Wayne staggered to the control panel, his fingers trembling as he input the sequence. The computer's voice echoed through the chamber, a cold and implacable countdown to oblivion. As the timer ticked down, Wayne felt a strange sense of peace settle over him. He had done his duty, had given everything he had to protect those he held dear. He thought of Odin, of the unlikely bond they had forged through blood and sacrifice. He thought of his fallen comrades, of the brave souls who had laid down their lives so that others might live. The countdown reached 0, and the world erupted in fire. The alien flagship detonated in a blinding flash of light, a searing wave of plasma engulfing the enemy fleet. Ships exploded like dying stars, their hulls shattering into glowing shrapnel. On the bridge of the human Klingon flagship, Odin watched the destruction unfold, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what it meant. Wayne, the human who had become his brother, was gone. He had sacrificed himself to save them all, had given his life so that their alliance might endure. As the remnants of the alien fleet fled into the void, the humans and Klingons regrouped, tending to their wounded and mourning their dead. The cost had been high, the losses staggering, but they had won. Against all odds, they had emerged victorious. In the days that followed, the Alliance began the long, slow process of rebuilding. Worlds that had been ravaged by war were tended to, their shattered cities and broken peoples slowly mending. And through it all, the memory of Wayne endured. He became a legend, a symbol of the indomitable spirit that had united two races against a common foe. His name was spoken with reverence by human and Klingon alike, a testament to the power of sacrifice and the unbreakable bonds of brotherhood. A memorial service was held, a somber gathering of warriors and diplomats, scientists and civilians. They came from across the stars to pay their respects, to honor the man who had given everything for the sake of peace. Odin stood before the assembled masses, his scarred visage a mask of grief and pride. He spoke of Wayne's courage, of his unwavering resolve in the face of unimaginable adversity. He spoke of the debt that could never be repaid, of the legacy that would endure for generations to come. As the service drew to a close, a lone Klingon voice rose in a haunting death chant, a final tribute to a fallen warrior. The sound echoed across the gathering, a mournful keen that seemed to encapsulate all the sorrow and all the hope of a galaxy reborn. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.